The Great ISA Tax Scandal. How Rachel Reeves is about to rob you blind. Savers across Britain are about to get the shock of their lives. For years, hard-working Brits have been putting their money into ISAs, trusting that the £20,000 tax-free savings allowance would help them secure their financial future. But now, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is planning a devastating move that could wipe out your savings potential overnight. Sources inside Westminster have revealed that Reeves is preparing to slash the tax-free allowance from £20,000 to just £4,000 a year, an outrageous 80% reduction that would make it nearly impossible for ordinary people to build their savings without the government taking a massive cut. And the worst part? This isn't just about budgeting or fair taxation. This is a calculated attack on Britain's savers, deliberately forcing them into riskier, more taxable investment schemes that benefit the financial elite. Savers are now being urged to act fast before these devastating changes come into effect. Stocks and shares ISAs have been outpacing cash ISAs by more than 3 times over the past year. While cash ISAs returned just 3.80%, investment ISAs have soared by 11.86%, proving to be the far superior choice for long-term growth. And yet, at the very moment when small investors are finally starting to see real returns, Reeves is ripping away their ability to invest tax-free. But why now? Why attack savers when inflation is still eating away at people's earnings and economic uncertainty is gripping the nation? The answer is simple: control. By slashing tax-free savings, Reeves is effectively herding Brits into taxable accounts, where the government can skim off the top and make sure that your financial success is their financial gain. Make no mistake, this isn't just about budget balancing or fiscal responsibility, it's about punishing savers while protecting the interests of the financial elite. Senior city executives and fund managers have been lobbying the government for months, pushing for changes that will funnel more money into their investment firms at the expense of ordinary people. And Reeves? She's more than happy to oblige, selling out British savers while pretending to act in their best interest. For years, investment ISAs struggled. Between 2022 and 2023, they even suffered negative returns of -3.27%, leading many savers to stick with cash ISAs instead. But now, just as stocks and shares ISAs are making an impressive comeback, Labour is swooping in to cripple the system before ordinary Brits can take full advantage. North American funds have delivered an astonishing 24.43% growth. UK equity income funds have provided a solid 14.50% return, and even Japan's markets have surged by 10.08%. The numbers prove that the market is turning around, yet Reeves is about to rob the British people of their chance to build wealth tax-free. And let's talk about the bigger picture. This attack on savers isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a wider pattern of economic betrayal from a government that promised to protect ordinary people but is doing the exact opposite. Reeves's cuts to ISA allowances come just as Keir Starmer's approval ratings are crumbling, and for good reason. Starmer swept into power last July on the back of a historic landslide victory. For a brief moment, Labour supporters thought they had secured a leader who could restore trust, stability and competence, but it took less than 8 months for the cracks to show. One gaffe after another, one disastrous budget after the next, Starmer's leadership has become a nightmare for Britain. This isn't just political mismanagement, it's a complete betrayal of Britain's future. The government doesn't care about your savings. The government doesn't care about national security. The government doesn't care about you. They are too busy covering up their failures, enriching the financial elite, and scrambling to control the growing backlash against their policies. So here's the truth. This isn't just about ISAs, defence spending, or popularity polls. It's about a government that is failing at every single level. And the worst part? They think you won't notice. They think you won't fight back. They think you'll sit back and accept it. Well, Britain, it's time to prove them wrong. Share this video, spread the truth, expose the lies. Because if we don't fight back now, there might not be anything left to fight for. The latest YouGov polling is utterly humiliating for Starmer. His popularity has now dropped below Boris Johnson. Yes, the very same Boris Johnson whose premiership collapsed under the weight of scandal. And here's the real kicker. The only Prime Minister in recent history to rank lower than Starmer is Liz Truss. Liz Truss, the shortest-serving, most catastrophic PM Britain has ever seen, is the only thing standing between Starmer and the title of worst Prime Minister in modern history. Even Tony Blair, long criticised for his role in dragging Britain into Iraq, still ranks far ahead of Starmer in popularity. Margaret Thatcher, despite being one of the most divisive figures in British politics, has a net advantage over Starmer of 44%. The numbers don't lie. Britain is waking up to the Labour disaster unfolding before our eyes. And it's not just about poll numbers, it's about trust. Starmer and his team are now seen as incompetent and dishonest by the British electorate. Every move they make seems to backfire. Every policy decision turns into another disaster. Labour was supposed to offer stability, but instead they're delivering chaos, confusion, and economic betrayal. But if you thought the government's failures stopped at economic policy, think again. Britain's national security is now at risk, and Labour is dragging its feet, while our allies demand action. Priti Patel has sounded the alarm, calling for Britain to step up and take a leading role in global defence. She's pushing for an increase in defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, warning that Britain cannot afford to fall behind in a world growing more dangerous by the day. And she's right. While the war in Ukraine rages on, the government's weak stance on military funding is drawing criticism from all sides. Defence Secretary John Healey recently declared that Britain must rearm and prepare for deterrence, yet Labour's leadership remains indecisive, slow and disorganised. Patel has called out Labour's failure to take security seriously, warning that Britain must do more to strengthen its military, invest in new technologies and ensure that we are ready for the challenges ahead. But instead of taking decisive action, Labour continues to stall, delay and avoid making real commitments. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has weighed in on the Ukraine conflict, making headlines with his brutal assessment of how much money the US has poured into the war effort. Trump slammed the Biden administration for spending $350 billion on a war that he claims never had to start, and accused European nations of failing to pay their fair share. His words have sent shockwaves through NATO and beyond, raising serious questions about the future of Western support for Ukraine. If the US pulls back its funding, Britain and Europe will be left to shoulder the burden alone, and with Labour's current attitude toward defence spending, that should worry every single one of us. So, let's put this all together. Rachel Reeves is about to rob savers blind, Keir Starmer is one of the most unpopular prime ministers in modern history, Britain's military is underfunded, and the Ukraine war is throwing NATO into crisis.